Hi, John Lay here. Welcome back to our Executive Briefing series. On this series, we're fortunate enough to interview the world's leading providers in learning technology and learning systems technology. And with each vendor, we learn about the business, the history, their differentiators, the scope of their solution, and then we get to dig in and see a nice demonstration to bring it all to life. Today, we're here to see Valamis, and we're here with Valamis' Chief Visionary Officer, Janne Hietala. Janne, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. So just as a short introduction, my name is Janne Hietala. I'm the Chief Visionary Officer at Valamis. Valamis is a learning technology company. We're operating in 7 different countries around the world. I'm going to be talking about the solution with John here today and doing a demonstration of the solution in the end.
Excellent.
So just confirming that you're able to see my screen.
We can.
Very good.
We can, meaning I can, and the future audience will be able to.
Okay, so I wanted to give you an overview on where we do think what's really driving digital learning and adoption of digital learning in larger organizations. We work with global best-in-the-class companies where we collaborate very closely on understanding how digital learning is changing, how L&D is changing, how L&D is becoming more a partner for the business side, and what do we need to do in order to support that from our product perspective as a comprehensive learning platform. And you have a lot of these different names like learning experience platforms, which is one of the capabilities we have within the product. You have the traditional learning management systems, looking at from the top down within the organization, pushing the learning and things like compliance within the organization. You have different solutions like learning record stores and learning analytics platforms. So we approach next-gen learning platforms as a comprehensive way that we built all these different capabilities within the product. I'm going to explain what it means from a customer perspective. But really to talk about why we are doing this, what is the purpose, and we've done quite a bit of work collaborating with customers, doing our own research and publishing. You can find a lot of these white papers on digital transformation of learning and digital transformation of workforce on our website. One of the big macro trends is reskilling. So we see the skills being changing and they're changing much more rapidly within organizations. And I think this is a tough situation for a lot of companies and organizations, also for governments and societies. And essentially it means that in these data skills and machine learning skills and AI-based skills, there's a lot of overheating job markets. And on the other end, the organizations are changing and transforming. So it means that a lot of the other people have specific job roles are disappearing from the organizations. And there's this effect of firing and hiring within these organizations. And this has already happened that a lot of these sort of salaries and high demand jobs have gone up in the demand. And so that means essentially that companies, to be able to get these high level experts for the organization, it takes more and more effort for them. And learning has become much more than a support function for companies. So continuous learning, continuous professional development, learning in the flow of work, what is kind of learning that you do on a daily basis outside from the formal learning is something that companies have looked to adopt. You have things like micro-learning being adopted in the organization. A lot of companies are looking to external content providers to provide ready-made content for their organization to be able to consumed in a very user-friendly way. But overall, we see the digital learning particularly being aligned much more within the core strategy of company to be able to adapt into these changes from environment and societal changes and generally the globalization and changing market. And as a result, we see critical skills being developed much more than acquired, and thinking in terms of just-in-time skills. What do I need to know in order to perform in my project? What do I need to know in order to support my team? What do I need to know to solve a specific problem? So we go and find information, find knowledge either within the organization or outside the organization, just using tools like Google and these others, and this is obviously being supported by learning technology within the organization when done properly. Also from the tech perspective, so learning is much more tech enabled. This is what we see. There are a lot of overlap between knowledge management, knowledge discovery within organizations, things like enterprise search, and where that's moving technologically, being enabled by AI and natural language understanding, and digital learning and learning platforms. So these are consolidating from the IT strategy perspective, IT architecture perspective, into one capability within the organization. It often starts from integration, and then organizations look to consolidate these platforms just to provide easier ways to manage that platform, easier ways to integrate the data, to have a more stable integration, to have a more consistent learning experience and experience for the users of this, and generally for providing one source of truth for accessing knowledge from the organization. And the learning specifically is just in time, in the flow of work. And what we mean by this, especially now in post-COVID world, is that we work digitally. We use tools like Slack, we use tools like Teams, we use tools like Spark, and these other ways to enable us to communicate real time with our colleagues, to work real time on the digital domain, have these calls, have the chats, and generally collaborate very effectively. So learning can't be another place where you go to learn. And we approach this challenge by enabling through chatbots and natural language interfaces access to the learning resources wherever you are working. So if it's Slack or if it's Teams, you have access to your learning recommendations as you work within that platform. Really on a big thing that we worked very hard on a long time is enabling data-driven learning organizations. And what it means is that we need to gather high quality data about learners, the organization, different kind of job roles, different kind of HR data, and consolidate that with your learning journeys, your learning progression, your learning interactions, and combine that with external data like operational data, how the organization is actually functioning and performing. So we call this organizational behavior big data, which you're very interested in. It is also very important in the future when organizations look to solve some of these more sort of current problems like engagement and right kind of content. They need to think in long term that how do we enable long term high quality data to be able to analyze and to be able to have evidence what's actually working and what's not within the organization. So obviously this is part of our strategy work that we've done over the years. But we see after COVID hit the world and shook really the companies, this has accelerated significantly as an agenda for companies. So how do we provide consistent approach for learning? How do we do digital learning first? How do we reskill and upskill people, and how we change how we operate as a company to be able to work in this post-COVID situation? So you need a lot of different kinds of tools. And I mentioned LXP and looking what we mean by comprehensive learning platform, or you can call it next generation learning platform. There's a lot of different names for that. I think this is just the learning platform as an overarching theme, which combines its combination of different capabilities. So we've always started from personalization of learning, putting the learner in the central place within the platform, making sure that you have all the information you need at the tips of your fingers, either through recommendations when we have more and more content being pushed to the learners. Finding the right content becomes more difficult. How we understand the data about the learner will help us to actually propose and recommend right kind of content when you need it the most. So understanding the working context, understanding the segmentation of the learners within the organization, and using the organization structure data to do things like analytics and understand what is really working within the organization or not. Content curation authoring tools is important piece. So learning platform without content is not a digital learning experience. So you need to have content, and often there is a really high quality content available from these external content providers. We partner, for example, with LinkedIn Learning, Harvard Business Publishing, edX, and these other best-in-class learning content providers that have a capability of providing both macro kind of learning, like MOOC type of courses, the certification courses, or micro-learning based content. But the really missing link so far has been the ability to contextualize that external content for your organization. So that's where the curation comes in. So where you combine the external ready-made content, you're accelerating the content creation process to be much more effective, but then you need to add what it means to us, what it means to my team, what it means to, in this part of learning journey, in this learning moment, where you're transitioning, for example, between different job roles within the organization. So when you add that organization-specific and job-specific content through curation, and you combine external with your own content, that's where we see the effectiveness of learning going up. So we have evidence to support essentially that. And we built the tools to really drive that within the organization, easy to use tools that are accessible by anybody within the organization. So obviously we have different kind of learning delivery. We can have very focused, personalized micro-learning experiences through recommendations, or we can have larger programmatic courses, which can be either cohort-based or fully asynchronous courses on continuous training, continuous education. And you need both. So when you map out these different learning journeys and learning moments, there's time and place for micro-learning, there's a time and place for more long duration macro-learning, where you spend more time on developing your skills and capabilities, and then micro-learning is used to refresh, reinforce, and help apply these within the organization. And even though we are living in this sort of consumerization of enterprise platforms, and the learner-centric approach is important, but we cannot forget about the organization goals and organization purpose as well. So we enable a lot of these learning management system capabilities within the same context, providing the same easy to access user interface, which is very role specific or sort of dynamic depending on what kind of role you have within the platform. We need to still manage different kind of courses and registration processes. We need to schedule training events and different kind of virtual sessions within the platform. We need to make sure that we're able to do assessments and pre and post testing, for example, in some cases. We need to make sure that we communicate effectively about upcoming courses, any changes in these agendas, and generally these are the management functionality within the platform, and we're bringing all these together, overlaid by sort of omni-channel approach for learning using different channels like mobile, chatbots, desktop approach, tablets. We leverage heavily AI as part of the solution. So these recommendation engines are highly adaptable depending on what kind of data we have from the organization available. We can leverage that and make better recommendations, and really have what I would call in the past, we've taken the lens what happened in marketing, in digital marketing, when they transformed from your separated online store and your brick and mortar experience into omni-channel approach, where the consumer was in the center. And what was really driving the consumer experience and the digital experience for the consumer, we've actually taken a lot of these similar concepts and think learning through marketing initiatives as well. How do you highlight the really important stuff in the best possible way and get the learners with least amount of clicks into the right kind of content, which will change their behaviors, help them solve the problems, and serve as the right kind of content that's driving business impact and business performance. So that's really how we think about comprehensive learning platforms, and we can go, of course, into much more detail. So if we take a more functional view from the platform perspective, if we start from the left, we're bringing in this external content within the platform. We're personalizing that through recommendations, through the chatbot queries, and what's called the intelligent knowledge discovery, which helps us to understand what's the content about. We have frameworks to support content curation and content push from the organizational perspective using learning pods, where you can combine these external internal resources, build either full micro-learning experiences, or these more blended approaches or long-term learning journeys for employees. We can manage these larger learning programs through course management, and we can curate and author our own content within the platform really seamlessly, having effective round-trip time from I need to go and make changes to this content. I spend 2 minutes changing the content, and it's updated everywhere that content was used within the platform and the organization. We have skills and competencies framework within the platform, which we can populate. People can self-recognize skills, so we can identify skills gaps, and they've been driven by your learning experiences as well, and push through. As you have learning interactions, we're able to see from the analytics side how the skills within as an employee develops, or as a team, or as an organization, and we can identify the skills gaps within the organization. So when we move into this management side, we're not forgetting about the admins and the L&D and the HR experts within the organization. we use what's called empathy mapping as a part of identifying that what are the core groups of users and their pain points when we launch the platform. The platform is very flexible, so we're able to configure that to really address the pain points of these personas with the functionality required. So it's not that you will take all the functionality from the platform and launch it to everybody. You will configure the platform through our process of implementation to address really the key pain points of these different personas, whether that's from the admin perspective, whether that's from the learning perspective. So we have an enterprise platform that's very configurable. It's still a standard product, which is updated on very frequently in the cloud. But you can have a sort of similar analogy when you look at Salesforce in the CRM world. It's highly configurable enterprise platform which consolidates all the data about the organization, about the customers, and the processes you have within the organization, and you configure it using the functionality you have within the platform. So we like to think these integrations specifically as a way to bring in the data required about the organization, about people, about different job roles and functions within the organization, and any other business data that's relevant to really highlight what is the learning impact. And we like to think that looking at learning data, we're able to evidence directly the right kind of behaviors, right kind of learning interactions that will drive business results for the operations side. And we don't necessarily have to translate everything through either skills frameworks and job role frameworks, because they tend to have very low bandwidth in a way, and we lose information when we do that translation. So when we look at very comprehensive data set from learning interactions and organizational perspective, and we have that operational data, we can have very interesting data science projects or building models and predictive models to highlight what is actually the impact and what are the decisions needed to be made around content, learning interactions, designing learning programs, really drive the best kind of behavior that we want to see from the business side. And obviously these external tools are really important to be integrated. So G Suite, Office 365 are something that we've done a lot of work to integrate and bring their capabilities within the platform. So we're able to curate from those platforms both content and leverage their capabilities in notifications, authentication, other sort of functionality, which helps the L&D teams, helps the users in best possible ways. So everything's overlaid. I mentioned the Learning Record Store, which is really the big data engine, and we use Experience API. If you're familiar with Experience API, it essentially enables us to provide high quality, consistent data where we have to do very little data engineering before we can do the analysis and the visualization of the learning happening within the organization, as opposed to having a proprietary or closed sort of data standard, which changes all the time. We're relying on standards framework on the data side, and that really enables us to do a lot of the stuff that we do. So maybe finally addressing the tech stuff. So obviously we have a very strong tech core as a learning organization or learning technology provider, and we're very proud of our cloud native capability where we leverage microservices and containers within the platform. And this is the sort of framework you would expect from consumer grade product, where we leverage both non-structured data and structured data for the platform, and these modern user interfaces which are fully responsive, and these frameworks that enable us to do the data science bit, data transformation piece, and the recommendation engines, for example. So I wanted to highlight in a way, because the tech stuff is moving from very similar to what happened with marketing, with the chief marketing officer and the CIO within the organization coming together, enabling the digital marketing tech within the organization. The same thing is happening within the learning space, that it's becoming much more a tech conversation. And I think when organizations look for their new learning platforms, they don't necessarily do enough due diligence as part of the tech stack of the product, because this is something that enables scalability. This is something that enables total cost of ownership on a long time, how we're able to update these, if we're managing things through infrastructure as a code, if we are provisioning these environments and scaling these automatically. I think there's a lot of outdated learning technology out there in the world, and a lot of these organizations are struggling because of that. So making sure that you have future-proof tech stack is just something that I want to recommend all these organizations to make sure when they're looking for new learning platforms. I will stop there on the sort of the presentation side. Any questions before we move into the platform demonstration?
Yeah, it's really a unique approach of bringing all those pieces together. I think organizations do that a lot of times on their own. They take the responsibility of piecing the different elements, the blocks together inside their own ecosystem. So being able to provide that, tie it to skills, and then tie that to business performance is you know, a nice, beautiful chain of value here to organizations. So I don't want to waste any time talking. I want to see it. Let's see it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, just wanted to highlight on that what you said, that we want to make sure that there's end-to-end control. So it comes from content side. When you instrument the content, that will define what kind of analytics you're able to get, what kind of data you're able to get out from there. And if you think that you have 3 different boxes, in some cases you have, let's say, or even 4, you have your content providers, that's one sort of technology. Then you have your LXP, which is another provider, your LMS, and then probably your learning record store. And you have 4 different integrations within these, and they all describe the learning experiences differently. So when you go through the process of looking at the data as end result, it's really difficult to translate and understand what happened early on and why they describe something like they did. So what we can do within one comprehensive learning platform is to have that end-to-end control. How do we instrument the content? We have control over that. How do we deliver that learning experience and gather data from that? How do we manage the learning from the organization perspective? And how do we analyze? And it's a loop. It's a feedback loop that you have to constantly investigate and analyze and feed it back to the L&D organization, as well as the business side of organization, to push these changes to have a really solid impact for the organization.
Interesting. Do you, from a geography standpoint of your clients, where are they? Are they all over the world, or are they?
We do have a global presence. There's a lot of customers in the US, so we do have an US business that's growing quite fast. We do have a lot of presence in Europe as well. So obviously being based in, headquartered in Finland and having presence in Germany, Netherlands, UK, that's really sort of our main focus within Europe. But yeah, most of our customers are large global organizations with more than 10,000 employees within the platform. And in some cases, they're scaling up to millions.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Let me just show you the standard demonstration environment that we have, so you get a little bit of look and feel. It doesn't necessarily resemble what is the experience for the end user, because it goes through the process of implementation, process of empathy mapping, and these other design thinking tools, which we use to really capture what kind of learning environment configuration do we need to have for a specific customer and organization. What are the tools from our toolbox that we need to take to fit the specific problems that the customers have? So here we have a standard configuration, and as a learner or as an admin, we all have the same view, which adapts to our permissions from the platform. But everybody within the platform is considered as a learner. So I'm able to see what's being recommended to me, where I've left off as learning paths and learning journeys. I can take a look at the individual resources and type of resources here. So these are, for example, microlearning modules. They could be external, they could be curated from internal, from the organization. We have some external goals, and we have assignment blended into this learning path here as an example. We have a summary information of me personally within the platform. What are the touch points? What are the either through skills frameworks and other taxonomies that we can bring into the platform? How do we want to reflect and consolidate the information about your learning progression? We have events that we manage within the platform, and we can schedule either classroom-based or training event-based registration processes. We can just enroll from here into these events. And we have some information about ongoing microlearning content that I've engaged with. And for example, social activities where we can see and make visible what are my peers, what is my team doing, what is the relevant content that's been pushed to me over the time. And you can see this little fox icon here in the bottom right corner. This is our chatbot Valbo. So you can see as a demonstration use case, this would be normally embedded either into your digital workplace tools like Slack or Teams, or it will be embedded into other systems. The main thing is that we're able to provide access to this wherever you spend most of your time as while you're working. So if you have DevOps teams within an organization that spend a lot of time in Jira or in your developer tools, that's where it should be enabled. If you have sales teams or you have operational teams working either in Salesforce or these other important tools, that's where we want to enable that, because we're able to capture now the context of where you're coming from and where you're accessing the information to reinforce the recommendations that we're doing. So just the basic query to show you a couple.
What exactly does it do? What does the bot do? Administratively, I see what it does, but for the learner.
Yeah, and you're able to see the recommendations from here. There are other interactions. I can ask about skills development, like if there's content mapped into skills frameworks. I don't know necessarily what I'm trying to find, but I can ask that, give me, I would like to improve my communication skills. So it will recommend me content that's tied into communication skills. So we're essentially condensing these recommendations to a natural language interface for people to access, which already knows all the background information from the learning platform about you as a learner and your place in the organization and what you're trying to do.
Cool.
Very good. Obviously, the important thing for our organizations is that they're very large, multinational, complex organizations. And that sort of complexity as a way to manage is really crucial. So when we look at things like managing the organization structures, managing the sort of how we want to structure the learning environment, we can enable one centralized access and personalization for whole organization, or we can have this distributed way of managing the learning organization, where you would enable, let's say, you have an organization in Finland and they're very advanced in their learning capability. So you will be able to enable different kind of tools for that audience and different content for them to have their own space, where you can have the overarching control from the central point from the platform perspective, through the data analytics, through pushing the content from the global side into the local side. And you have a lot of different layers of structuring this environment, either through these different site organizations or through these organization structures that you can have. So managing that organization structure will relay into all kinds of different things, like how content is being pushed. What do you see when you log in into the platform? Do you build this microsite strategy where you consolidate actually content around topics and function, or do you have this more job role based approach within the platform? So that's obviously like a tricky to demonstrate when I'm talking about that, but you get a sense when we look at the analytics data. Let me just show you the skills analytics for really quickly, sort of the out-of-the-box skills capability. So when we bring in this organizational data, it means that now we can filter based on either function or job role or office location, and really drilling down into either on a user level and take a look from the analytics data. So your configuration and the organization structure will relay and reflect the recommendation, the segmentation, and the analytics, how we want to slice and dice everything that's happening within the platform. Sometimes when you have very complex organization, it makes sense to enable sort of this moderation and management on a local level, instead of just working everything from this one size fits all organization structure. And the same goes for a lot of organizations that have specific functional requirements, either you're training from the same environment, your employees, doing your onboarding, and you might have a functionality where you train your external, let's say your partners, for example, and you will have a requirement to configure that environment slightly different. It's the same platform, same management, same integration from your organization perspective.
Mm-hmm. Where do the skills originally come from? Where do they come from? Where does that definition come from? Do organizations have their own definition, or do you provide it, or does the AI provide it?
Very often organizations have their own definition. So this is a little bit, if we're working with US-based organization or Europe-based organization, they might have a different kind of skills framework. Mm-hmm. We've seen things like KSAs being driven like a standardized skills frameworks, but very often it is an organization-specific framework coming from performance management side or talent management side, and we're pushing that through the integration as a framework within the platform. But we have a capability to just manually input all this and manage all this. If you don't have that in place, you can do all that within Valamis. So here's an example of sort of example skill set. I can go as an individual and see and do my evaluation. This can be pushed again from external performance management if required. If I go and tick that I have a professional ability to give constructive feedback, but I would like to develop that at the a next level, I will get recommendation based on this, and we'll have data within the learning record store of this click-through interaction that I've actually increased my skill or evaluated my skill at this level. There are going to be prerequisites for certain access to content when I'm now at this level, and when I complete certifications, it will drive my recognition of skills further through these frameworks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, cool.
Yep, very good. So looking at different kind of learning objects and learning resources within the platform, we have things like channels, which are highly configurable, sort of recommendation engine type of functionality, where we can just look at the organization's requirements. If we have LinkedIn content available, we have LinkedIn Learning integration, we can push that external content through here, combination of internal content and external content, trending and popular within my peer group, for example. We can go and see through learning paths. So these are curated resources into longer learning journeys that we can go and manage. And there are a lot of different kind of functionality around learning paths that help organization to put together the right kind of learning objectives and learning resources. So if we look at the different kind of available, just out of the box learning goals that we can tie into learning paths, we can have macro level courses or even social activities, assignments, learning events, another learning paths, external content, just your feedback forms or review forms. We can group them in different ways, set kind of availability deadlines. We can make that into compliance training, compliance certification, or certification that you need to renew. So there's this blend between the functionality going from very informal learning into formal learning, which you can all manage in the same place and provide a very consistent experience. I think that the learners' drive and interest should be the main driver through recommendation, but you cannot just forget the organization's interest. So it is balancing between the top-down and bottom-up approach, and pushing that through the same lens and same functionality will help drive interest, but also drive the organization's business goals that they're trying to do through learning and development, if that makes sense.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So just showing you really quickly, like a learning events management side, this is something you would expect from learning management system to be able to just show and manage these different kind of training events. We can schedule webinars. We have integration to your online tools. If we have that enabled, it will automatically schedule these links and notify all these parties from the platform that if there's changes to the schedule, if there's waiting list, that you register in the waiting list, that there's a quota of people that can be admitted into the training event, it will automate a lot of these tasks and make life really easy for the managers.
Can learners use, or can organizations use different commercially available virtual tools like Zoom? And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the main point, that we just integrate with those tools and provide a seamless experience for the users through your calendar integrations and stuff like that.
Does it after the session? Does it go back and record who was there and any of their interactions? It seems like you're really good at that.
Yeah, we're able to get back, depending on the tools that we use, your attendance information. Like Zoom provides quite interesting capabilities around analyzing actually what was discussed in those meetings. So we're looking at that capability to bring in additional metadata about those interactions. So that's really interesting approach that they have for that.
Okay, thank you.
So that's more on the management side. But when we look at the learning authoring and curation tools, so this is often a third-party tool where you need to buy licenses, and it's often the L&D organization that buys these licenses. They work either on the desktop application in Windows machines only, or there's some couple of cloud tools available that are quite good, but we provide all that capability within the one platform. I seem to have maybe I have logged out session. Let me just see. Okay, now it's open. So this is a tool where you can just bring in your existing content. So it's either from your G Suite or OneDrive or Dropbox. You bring in the either video-based resources or these resource files like PowerPoints or PDFs. You're able to import them here and just start working and creating based on that flat content. You're going to start transforming that into digital learning content. So when we import the PowerPoint, it will just show it as slides here, and we're able to add things like pre and post test. We're able to add videos and these other interactions, which we bring from these cloud tools, either from internal or external, like YouTube or Vimeo, within the platform. We're able to embed any external content, like this third-party content provider content, as part of these lessons, and it will provide a much better, consistent experience when you have your organization-specific templates and themes within the content. So we're able to provide that consistency and high-quality content structure out of the box whenever somebody within the organization is starting to create content. So everything we do here, we can design either fully responsively, or we can just decide that we're going to rely on the platform to adjust that to different devices. But in some cases, you want to have actually different content for mobile, for example. So if you have very large pictures, you're able to use different pictures or different imagery for the mobile devices, or hide some elements. So I can just hide this from mobile if I want, and show just text instead, and it's going to be still visible as a video for desktop. Same goes for languages. So when we manage multiple languages for content, which we do in the same tool, managing the multiple language versions, we can actually use the different kind of imagery and different kind of content for different languages if needed. So we can just make sure that all the content is culturally correct when we do that for different countries and different languages. And as an added benefit of this tool, what we found out working with Translation Office, for example, they can do the translations for the content and maintain the translation right in the tool in the right kind of context. So they can just manage the different language versions very easily. So these are sort of more practical functionality, but often overlooked by organizations looking at these kind of tools. And everything we do here is XAPI compliant. So we push out XAPI standardized content that's being instrumented using XAPI. So if we have video-based content, for example, and somebody goes and clicks that content, interacts with that, every time there's a click at certain part of the video, we'll get information as an XAPI statement that you watched the 10 first second, then you skip 2 minutes, then you continue for 5 more seconds. So we're able to do very granular analytics based on these interactions with the content. And when it's built into the platform, you don't have to worry about that. I hope this makes sense.
And so you got that kind of analytics. What do you do with that then? What would be the practical flip side of that administratively, having that level of detail?
Well, it is the question that we want to make sure that on a long-term basis, we can enable that data-driven decision making. So what is the right kind of content we want to push for certain audience? What is the right kind of content that's really driving results as an organization? And we don't just want to look at individual learners, and a lot of organizations are focused on individuals. We want to take a look at teams. We want to look at how teams perform, how teams learn, what kind of learning graphs and trajectories the teams will have, and their interactions and communication patterns, for example, will have indications of things like psychological safety that will basically drive innovation and creativity within the organizations. So we're very interested in understanding learning behaviors and learning organizations through the data, and having evidence to back up which kind of recommendations do we make, what kind of decisions the organizations will take, to make sure that data is consistent, data is high quality, and just building that across the platform, no matter if you're looking at video interactions or higher level skills development from the platform. We want to make sure that at every level we have that consistency and data quality there. So just a couple examples to show that to you in a way. This is an event management analytics dashboard. So when we look at who's created content, we can filter who's really driving these events, which structures they are placed in. If we have this core structure, we have hierarchical events that go across the platform. We can just filter and slice and dice this information. How many people registered, exited at certain stages? What kind of attendance did we have? And that's just based on the granular data that gets aggregated at higher levels. When we look at things like adoption within the platform, when we launch the platform, we're able to see what is the kind of content at the early stage that drives engagement. How often people will come back. So you're, again, going back into how you view from the marketing perspective, your customer experience reflects very much into how you view your learning experience as an organization, how you should push certain kind of content to our L&D marketing tools, if you will, into your target audience to drive and help with that engagement and help with the results and retention through the platform, for example. So these are just examples of out-of-the-box analytics that we have within the platform. One sort of demonstration that we often do is the learning impact analysis. So here we have a correlation of security trainings and security incidents within the organization. And we brought in this data, the security incident data, and just now we're able to slice and dice as part of the organization that where do we have the most adoption for security training content, where we might have lacking of security training content, and how we see actually the security incidents going down over time because of using of the security training content and effectiveness of security training. So this is a very simplified example of often very complex data science problem, but we have experts within the organization where we help our customers to solve these kind of problems on a larger scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, awesome.
So maybe that's a good place to conclude. I gave you not everything from the platform because it's really like I described in the beginning, a big toolbox, and it needs to be configured in the right way. And we have a very good working process how we implement the platform effectively, quite quickly for organizations, and we take them through the steps of understanding your audience and us making the recommendation how we need to configure the platform for a target organization. And that's where our relationship starts with customers. So it's really the starting point of long-term, this is what you need to launch now. This is where we need to introduce digital learning for organization and drive adoption, drive engagement. When we move into more mature stages, we use the analytics to push insights and recommendations. How do we need to change the experience to improve it, decrease those clicks that people need to do to find the right kind of content and adjust. I think the search is a good example when we go and let's just use it as an example here. When we have a lot of content, a lot of external content, and it's not really structured in any kind of smart way within the platform. So these frameworks and categories and taxonomies are really important for that. You will have too much content that will decrease your engagement and confuse people. So more content is not always better, but you have to structure and contextualize and target it in the right way. And when you have enough content targeted in the right way, then that's what's driving a high-performing learning organization. You need to have data to support that decision, if that makes sense.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, I love it. I love it. This is great. I love the thinking and how you're approaching the problem here from a data science perspective and from an instructional perspective, and combining the data. And I've seen examples, but not many, of like the security, bringing the security data. I've seen a similar example, like bringing like accident data, over the years and combining that. But there's so few and far between that you're thinking like that on a regular basis. It is pretty cool. What would be the just an average time an average customer invest in this implementation process? Like 90 days, maybe?
We can do the basic installation and delivery right now within a week. So we can really get the platform functionality in front of the users really quickly. When we go through the design process on the larger organizations that require this sort of design thinking approach, it will take from 1 month to 3 months, which is quite often the case. But that often forces the organization to think and rethink some of the assumptions they made from their previous platform. If they're structured around catalogs and this course type of structure, moving into personalized approach where they actually have more content, but it's filtered through the recommendation, through the search, through curated learning paths, for example, and targeted at certain learning moments as part of these learning journeys. So there is often a consultative approach that we take, partnering with the organization and help them to restructure their existing content and existing learning processes for the new way of learning for the organization.
Understood. Well, it's yeah, as I said, I love it. It's a great approach. I like all the pieces pulled together. You know, I haven't heard anybody be so practical about XAPI either. You know, it's yeah, this is a real practical approach to that. You know, I hear a lot of people say XAPI, but I never hear the next 2 or 3 layers of, you know, how they're thinking about that and what that means and how that translates into the video, for example. Yeah. So really a lot of innovation here. Love it.
Yeah, the XAPI really is enable consistency and quality of data for us. And if organizations know about XAPI, they're excited about that. That's great. That's awesome. But whenever we deliver the platform, it always will have the learning record store at the core. Organizations don't need to invest into external learning record store. We will bring it into the organization. And the payoff of that comes later. So when you launch that and you collected that data and it's already from the beginning very high quality, so if you do it other way around, that later on you plug in the LRS and you start looking at the data, that it doesn't make any sense. You have to go back and look at the instrumentation of the content. You lost a lot of time. You lost essentially the lead time to become that data-driven learning organization. And that's what we enable from the get-go when we launched the platform.
Wow, interesting. Last question. From a use case perspective, it seems like everything is really focused on employees. Is there use cases for this for like customers of these organizations?
That's a very good question, and I actually didn't address that as part of the presentation. We do have several customers where we train the external. So we have full e-commerce functionality where we can deliver through payment gateways for organizations that sell their content and have a full training business. And we have very large environments like Amadeus, for example. There's online case studies about Amadeus where they train their customers through the platform. So that is a big use case, and especially where the marketing approach shines through when we start thinking learning through training business and learning business, selling the content and selling the learning experiences and having value delivered through those learning experiences.
Well, customer learning as a standalone vertical is thriving inside the United States, so it doesn't need to be, and often is not tied to the employee development. It is like a standalone vertical, and boy, in your shoes, I'd be chasing that market to something fierce because they speak the same language as you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, hey, Johnny, thanks for sharing all the innovation that you guys are working on and the great thinking. I appreciate having you on the series with open invitation to join me on the podcast sometime and share your vision here in a different format to our audience. But thanks for taking the time, and great stuff. Keep it up.
Thank you very much, and you're most welcome. So
you bet. Have a great day, everyone.